problems, all the way from children, early child age, to school level, high school, and adults who are suffering these days from the same problem, and that is depression, anxiety, a lack of purpose, not feeling fulfilled, and hence not being able to give the world the best that they can offer. Okay, and that's, I think, one of the greatest problems that that we have so many human beings that have so much to offer to this world, yet they, number one, cannot because there's a block. Number two, don't want to because they're scared and afraid. And number three, there's no one to help them to extract those skills and to extract those abilities and to benefit the world. Okay, but today, inshallah, we're going to focus on only one of those problems, and that is how to position ourselves as school counselors, and what's the importance of the counseling projects and programs within the schooling system. So currently I work as a school principal, and I work with a school in Kuala Lumpur. Before this, I was in Sharjah, in Sharqa, in United Arab Emirates, and I was there for about 10 years, and I was working with quite a few schools there, as well as traveling to Australia, the UK, Canada, and USA, dealing with different communities there with education and education programs. And within the realm of education, counseling is almost as important as the subjects and education itself. So a lot of people, a lot of school programs, be it university, be it high school, be it grade school, they focus on delivering curriculum. Okay, and curriculum usually amounts to these subjects that you have to take. All right, the KPIs that you have to fulfill within these subjects, and of course the marks that you have to obtain through the assessment to make sure that you have understood and you have met the requirements. However, there's one thing that is being ignored, and that is why we are here today to talk about it. So let's start with the problem, the issue of guidance. Okay, guidance. We call them actually guidance counselors. And of course, within the world, when it applies to adults, okay, that is, people usually, when they look at counselors, is that they only go to them when they have a problem. And that is not correct necessarily. So yes, of course, when you have a problem, you want to go to their counselor to help you. But I would say that is damage control. You've already experienced a problem and now you're trying to fix it. Within the educational sphere, what we focus on as school principals, as consultants, is what's called preemptive measures. Okay, you don't want the problem to happen. And as you know very well, as students of psychology, mashallah, because I see that this is a psychology club, as you know, children go through developmental stages. And specifically, there are certain age categories in which kids are basically going through those development stages, and they're the most sensitive. And these are the formative stages. Basically, in very simple words, is where the child starts forming his ego, his alter ego, his brain is developing. He's not only developing from biological perspective, that he is growing, that he is maturing, but the brain is physically developing and emotionally developing. Okay, and the problem of, sadly, the 21st century psychology and the previous century psychology is, even though by definition psychology, the study of the psyche, was early, the Greeks would define as the study of the human soul, today we are more focused towards the human biology, the imbalance in the chemicals in the brain, the neuronal connections, and so on. And we try to treat them always through medicine and so on. I would argue that counseling is much more important than that. I'm not saying that there's no purpose for medicine. There is, no doubt, the psychiatrists and those who are qualified to do that. However, However, we in the educational field, as for those who might think about going into that field, you are students right now, you might be thinking to pursue a career in school counseling, which is a great and very fulfilling career, okay? Because there's a great objective in doing that. But what I'm trying to say is that even though the definition of psychology is the study of the human being, the soul specifically, we are not focusing on that. So when it comes to education, the problem is that we are not taking preemptive measures to make sure that our students are moving through those developmental stages with the least amount of trauma. And I'm sure you all know what trauma is. Why do I mention trauma? Because this is where the problem starts. Why are students misbehaving sometimes? Why do students do not fulfill their greatest potentials? Why do students do bad in academics? What are the issues? A lot of times, school managers will look at just the outside because they're not qualified in actually knowing how to analyze the situation. So they'll call a student to the office and say, you've done this and you've done that and you've done this and so on and so on. You know, you're a bad boy. And they fail to understand a very important issue, as is why. Why is this student misbehaving? Why is this student not doing the best in school? Why is this student depressed or anxious? Why is he fighting or she? What's happening? Why are they cheating? Why are they, just wasting time, not fulfilling their objective and their purpose, right? They don't see that, sadly, right? And that's where I believe what you are doing and what we are doing is so important for the future of education, the future of the world, because this is the next generation. This generation, um, some of us might have been born in the previous century, like myself, and in the previous millennium. Okay, I'm 83, right? So 1983. We're different. Millennials are different now. They are totally in a different environment. They're surrounded by social media, surrounded by so much technology. They didn't grow up the same way we did. So they're facing with a lot of the challenges that we might not have felt in the same way. So if we fail to facilitate their transition through these formative stages, those critical stages where it is so important to experience, to lessen the trauma. Now, trauma is inevitable, it is part of human life. We've all suffered certain issues in our life. And it is, in the end, in the existential, philosophy or school of thought, we say that this is kind of like, if you look at it, this is kind of who you are, and you are who you are because of some of the things that you've gone through in life. As long as you can face it and understand it, right? You don't run away from it. However, it is our duty to reduce the trauma. What happens when a child or a student goes through trauma? Okay, what happens is there's an unresolved dispute between maybe the emotions, the beliefs, and the actions of that person himself or those around him. And a certain incident that could be a stimuli from the outside will leave a mark on that person, a psychological a print on the psychology of the person or the emotional well-being of that person that will affect the flow of a person. What is the flow? The flow is the way you perform, the way you move, the way you talk, the way you feel throughout the day, the way you wake up, the way you go to sleep. Flow is what our human beings, us human beings have, and the way we move through life. When flow is blocked, then we're not performing at our best. When flow is moving, then alhamdulillah, you feel great, you feel like you can be on top of the world, right? You have those days. I'm sure a lot of you have those days. However, we have the days when the flow is not working well, right? Why? Because something has upset us. Something has put an imbalance in our being, and we don't feel like performing. You have all the resources, everything is there, the job, whatever, the environment, everything is facilitated to you, but then you have something that says to you, I don't feel like doing it, isn't it? I'm sure we've all felt it, right? I don't know why, I don't feel like doing it. I'm just not there. So students, children have the same issue, right? But we fail as educators, as managers of schools, principals. That's why I like to train principals and train teachers and psychologists and educators and counselors to understand this point. How do you look at your child, your student, the one who's been entrusted to you by the parents or by the system, by the government, whatever? How do you look at them? Do you look at them as a someone who's doing something wrong, or do you look at them as someone who needs guidance, who needs support? Sadly, too many people today look at our children, at the world, as, okay, this is a criminal, and a criminal in the sense of that they're doing something wrong, as opposed to maybe this is someone who is sick and needs help. Okay. And to understand the reason as to why the person behaves the way it is. So to contextualize it, let's say I would be a principal of a school, and I am, and I see my students misbehaving. I see my students not doing well. So the first thing that I could do is to say, okay, come to my office. I will punish you. I will give you suspension. I will slap you. I whatever, and sadly, in many, systems, right? That's how people think, right? Or if I'm trained and qualified and understand the dynamics of what is going on, I can say, okay, can I talk to you for a second? I've noticed, right, that you're behaving like this. I feel that there's something going on in you. Could you please tell me what's happening? And they might not want to tell you. Why? Because they don't feel like they can connect to you. And that's another place where there's a problem for us, and we fail as educators and as managers, that we cannot connect. The connection is one of the most important. Why? That allows for people to open up to you. If I'm walking around pointing and chastising everyone, most likely people are not going to be willing to connect to me. They will be afraid of me. They're still suffering. They need help, but they're not going to reach out. And that is why most of the people who are suffering from depression and anxiety in this world are not willing to step forward and ask for counseling. They're not willing to step forward and help and ask for help. Very small percentage of those people who are suffering from anxiety and depression finally do come forward and ask for counseling. So I have counseling sessions every week. My schedule is full, but I always notice, and that's just a fraction of the world's population, the population of my community, because most people do not want. Why not? They don't feel that they can, without being judged, without being chastised. Okay. And remember, there's a difference. There's a difference in how you look at that person. Is it someone needs help, or is it someone who's just bad? Right. And the way you perceive that and you look at that, it's up to you. If you are trained to understand as to who you are and what's your contribution. Are you a police officer? Are you a law enforcer to judge people? Or are you someone, if you're a principal or a guidance counselor or a psychologist or psychiatrist, is someone who is pretty much like a doctor. I call them doctors of the hearts, of the souls, of the minds, right? Because you have to treat people. And to be able to treat people, people have to come to your office, or you have to go to them and connect to them. So that is one of the greatest challenges as educators, as leaders in schools, as counselors, is to identify the problem, to know how to connect to the person who's suffering the problem, so it maximizes their chance and their exposure to you, and they'll come to you and say, you know what, I have a problem, I need help. Another thing that I notice in my practice, and I've looked up, some of the researches as well, that it's mostly usually women who come forward when it comes to seeking help. Guys seem to suffer because of, they think that this is kind of a sign of weakness. And that is why actually the greatest number of depression, anxiety, and even suicide is within the men population. And even I've had quite a few cases, and I have even on my table right now a few potential suicidal cases. Okay, this is not a joke. And I'm talking about this, I'm trying to connect to my practice just so you understand the seriousness of this. And no one wants to be in that situation, be it that there is someone they know, or someone that they work with, or someone that is under their care. Right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. So we've stated the problem, okay? We're having an issue worldwide, trust me, from Canada to United States, all the way to the other side, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, okay? And in between the Middle East, GCC, Khalij, is the same issue. Some countries are pushing forward now and understanding that, while some are still developing. But I believe that we can all easily catch up with this because all it needs is awareness. Okay, so number one, that's what we're doing right now. We're doing this lecture because of awareness. And number two, it needs to build a very practical system that is based on clear-cut objectives and a clear-cut mission and vision. And of course, training, which is, alhamdulillah, we're all into education. Training is not that difficult, all right? And then I believe that slowly we can turn the tables around and address some of these issues. So that is basically the main problem. And I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of questions, so we're gonna also take questions, inshallah. So how do we overcome this problem? Let us get a bit into it. So I always advise that it has to be at a national level, like the Ministry of Education or those who are in charge have to start providing and opening jobs that are specific in this niche, in this field, and train and offer such degrees as maybe you are pursuing that qualify people to be counselors, okay? To be counselors, and specifically counselors within schools, okay? So today we're talking specifically about counselors in schools. So, because that is where we are building our future. Okay, I would argue that that is the most important. Now, of course, countries will work and counseling for adults, as I said, but this is where we're building our future. So I would say the greatest resources should be invested into education and into training counselors who are educators. Okay, what's the difference? I always argue, again, coming from an educational background, that education is different. Okay, people get into education for business reasons. People get into education because they don't have another job. People get into education for whatever reason. I always say that education is such a specific field that requires a certain understanding, a certain philosophy of education that needs to be very clear. It cannot be a second option. If you want to be in the education field, be it that you are a teacher, be it that you're a manager, be it that you're an investor, be it that you're a counselor, okay, you have to be fully convinced that this is the path that I want to take, because the responsibility is so great. You are dealing with nurturing human souls, okay? I started as a grade 1 teacher, okay? So imagine I'm 6'2" and I'm teaching these little ones, okay? Grade 1, okay? When I was teaching in Abu Dhabi, well, before in Canada, but then when I went to Abu Dhabi, I was teaching grade 1 as well. And those kids, every single moment that you are with them, you are guiding them, and they absorb everything. Depends on what you give them, that's what they're going to take. And as I said, because of the time sensitivity, because of the formative nature of that period of time, they will absorb the knowledge so fast, and it will contribute to the formation of their personality. So people who misbehave in their 20s, their 30s, they have problems, psychological problems. A lot of times it goes back to the history in the school, in those formative stages, that something happened, as I said, a trauma, a problem. Yeah. So because that was not solved, now they are suffering as adults. We might have some of those remnants. We might have some of those problems. You understand? We sometimes don't know, why do I feel the way I do? Why am I not happy? I don't understand. I have a good job. I have a husband or a wife or whatever. I'm okay. Everything's fine. Why am I not feeling fulfilled? Why am I not happy? Right? What's going on? Why am I anxious, depressed? Why do I need to go and take medicine? Where is this? Right? A lot of times we don't realize it goes back 20 years. to those formative stages, something that might have happened in the classroom with a teacher, with a student, that trauma that was not solved, was not understood, and basically it dragged on and you kept moving through the different stages of development in life, you did not close that chapter. It's like you've not mastered or not closed a certain skill in mathematics and you've moved on, but you moved on with the weakness. And now you're in university and you're having problems in calculus class because you could not fix that one problem when you really had to. But then how do we know that? I mean, this is like almost unseen, right? How can someone know that? See, that's the point about training and about developing such a program where people who are qualified are in the school. So not only that someone will come to them, they'll create an environment that is so positive and so comfortable where people, kids, parents will come to them and open up because of the problems, but they themselves will be able to identify some of these problems. And that is why I always advocate that teachers themselves are the first counselor, the first line of defense in counseling is the teacher. And the teachers have to be trained to understand, to identify, even to the point of understanding body language. What does it mean when the kid is always, his shoulders are down and he's hunching his back? What does that mean if you see it over and over again? What if there are dark circles under his eyes? A lot of teachers don't realize this. They don't make a note of this. They don't ask the child, look, come here, Khalifa, I want to talk to you. I've noticed, Khalifa, that for many days now, you have dark circles. Like, are you sleeping well? What's happening? And this is a loving, nurturing teacher that Khalifa feels very comfortable with to open up because there's that fatherly or motherly figure in that teacher. So it's not like Khalifa, harsh, No, they feel like, yeah, teacher, Mr. Teacher, I'm not sleeping well. I have a problem at home. My mom and dad are fighting or arguing, right? And you'd be like, oh my God, astaghfirullah, this is not bad. No, see, we don't understand. This is not an issue of pride or anything like that. This is an issue of amana, of trust. And it's not about getting involved in someone's business, but it's about understanding how it affects that child and how it will affect that child 20 years from now. And the counselor, i.e., the teacher in the first place, sees and identifies that. Just like they identify weakness in studying, just like they identify what we call the surbat ta'lim, like a difficulty in learning, right? They basically identify that. They're the first one. And now they can slowly recommend. So it's like, you go from the general to the specific, right? So the teacher is generally trained and aware of how to identify certain signs of problems within students and then talk to them. If that doesn't work now, they still see a problem or the problem is beyond their control, you take it now to the specialized counselor, which should be in every school. Every school should have at least 5 counselors, specific jobs with amazing pay, great, professional development opportunities, where the person fully focuses only on this, fully focuses only on guiding the students, helping them reach purpose. Okay, so the identification process by the teacher, moving on to the counselor, and of course then if that is not solved, that is where the educational system, the minister, and so on, who are in charge, would now offer us another layer, which, if the problem is really something big, then those in charge can be involved in solving this problem. All right. And there's no shame in that. This is something that is a prophetic practice. This is something that is solving problems. Is something that is a protection for the future of our children, right? So these qualified people are basically establishing a system. You need, as I said, 3 to 5, depending on the size of the school, okay? And who understand, and not just that they look for the problem, but they also work with the students, and that is my next point, to tackle the most important point in their life in that development stage and all of our lives. And that is, what is your purpose? See, humanity, mankind, be it children, be it adults, if we don't understand that we have a purpose or that we don't have a way in what we do in life to feel that we belong, to feel that we want to do something, that leads actually to depression and anxiety, even at a young age, even as early as 4 years old. Last night, I was talking to a client, a 35-year-old male from United States of America, New York. Okay. And this is someone who is contemplating suicide. Okay. Someone who is contemplating suicide. And I had to take him back into the history of his, and we went back as far as 4 years old. He had these thoughts at 4 years old, at the age of 4. Why? Trauma, abuse. Okay, his father was abusing him. Imagine a 4-year-old thinking about ending life. And that trauma was never solved. So it moved on till the age of 35, right? Where he is seeking assisted suicide. You understand that? It's not a joke. That is why these programs are so important. We never want to reach this point. You never want to reach this point where you're 35 and you're seeking assisted suicide. So that, how do we do it? Well, at that age, that formative stage, you want to protect the child. You want to help the child. 4 year, 5, 10, 15, whatever it is within that, high school period, right? This is where we can fix the problem. We can reduce the damage. We can help people solve those traumas and graduate from that stage to the next stage of development healthier in a better way. Okay. So I think it's not difficult to establish this system. I think it's quite simple. As long as the resources are there, the training is there, the system is quite simple. Okay, each counselor is in charge of a certain grade level, and they pull the students in. They should meet, ideally, with each student at least once every 2 weeks. And they should go over things such as, how do they feel emotionally? How do they feel spiritually? How do they feel physically? They should talk about plans. What are your plans, right? As I said, the greatest driving force for children, for students, is to have a purpose. So today I was talking to my students. Okay, I still teach. And I said to them, like, what do you guys want to do 10 years from now? If we are to meet 10 years, and they were 16 years old. These are year 11. So I said to them, if we are to meet 10 years from today, where do I see you? And that, this, just a question like this, it triggers such a healthy discussion and plans and emotions and just excitement as opposed to anxiety. Look at the difference. Anxiety, negative. Excitement, positive. How do you reduce anxiety and increase excitement, right? Through creating a certain paradigm, mental paradigm, about what the future can look like in a positive way. And that is why positive psychology is so important. I encourage you guys, it's a new science. It's not so old, that started, just a few decades ago. But positive psychology is not about highlighting the problems, even though today I am a bit, because it is an issue. But I believe that is the problem. The solution is positive psychology, right? It's about highlighting the positives. It's about looking at the potentials of things. Okay, looking at the potentials as opposed to just the problems. Looking at the traditional psychology model, of course, is coming from a very secular atheistic type of behavior, right? Looking at Freud, Skinner, and so behaviorism, whatever it might be. When you study these theories and you study these theorists, you'll find quite a lot of disagreement amongst them, criticism, and so on. There's been a lot of great work that's been done, no doubt about it. But I believe moving forward, it is our responsibility, looking at the world and the challenges of the world, to realize that being positive is much better. You don't look at what's wrong with the human beings only, but you look at what's right with them and how you can build upon that, right? So the positive psychology counselor in the school will call the students, and he would sit with them, or she will sit with them, and start visualizing and planning as to how does the future look like? What courses are you going to take? What are you going to do? What is your plan? So the student gets excited. It's not easy. Not everyone will be like, yeah, I want to do this. So that's where the skills come in. How do you contain? How do you bring someone to this understanding? How do you make them be excited about it, right? So this is where we train. So we can understand, because not all the students are going to be willing to, especially the ones that have already suffered trauma. I'm sure you've already all seen the type of student who's just like, whatever, I don't want to talk, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? It's quite difficult. I have a lot of those students, right? So you have to crack that trauma, and you don't give up. So over and over again, you keep working with them. You'll find that from the, let's say there's a school that has a population of 500 students, and you have five counselors in it. Everyone works with 100 students. Amongst those 500, for those five counselors, each one with 100, you will narrow it down to maybe 5 to 10 critical cases, maybe even less than that, right? Those will deserve most of your attention. As for the other ones, it's about maintenance, about helping them, guiding them, be it about their, their future, about their current issues, and so on, right? So, but most of the, like, it'll be like five or 10 of them who will need, severe attention, right? So, it's possible. It's quite a simple module. And look, 2020 has been a very, very difficult year. uh, Online schooling, virtual learning has proven to be very, very effective, no doubt. Zoom, Teams, all kinds of different programs, um, different corporations and programs have come forth. There's a lot of benefit, no doubt. However, for those who have looked into the research of teaching and learning, you know that a human being reacts to the screen very much differently than they react to a real human being. As you know, in education and in development, proximity is key, to be close to someone, to see them in 3D. So yes, there's a lot of studies now that look at the negative effects of using screens to learn. Right now, I know the future and everything is automated, and people are pushing for technology. But in reality, if we are looking at the benefit of humanity, I can tell you, based on the research, that technology has to be limited. It is not that it has to be not used. No, we should use. It's important. That's, it makes things easier. But problem is, we are suffering from a new strand of addiction, and that is technology or screen addiction. And that is why 2020, especially with the lockdown, because of Corona, so many people have been glued to the screen, be it Netflix, be it other social media outlets, right? Because of social distancing. So people have turned more to the social media. Now, there's quite a lot of studies that show the negative effect of social media on children, on students, and on adults as well. Okay, quite a number of studies. You can just Google it and you can get the academic research on this. But the exposure, number one, to the screen, the radiation, the addiction, people cannot let their phone down. I'm sure most of you have one, two, maybe three phones. And how many times do we feel like we have to pick it up and check? Sometimes, one of the studies was saying that if you feel like it's ringing or it's vibrating and you're always checking in your pocket, it is a sign of addiction. All right. So a lot of people, yes, there's a lot of benefits. Yes, we can keep in touch now much easier with our relatives that are thousands of kilometers away. However, we have to understand and put everything in context. Just because something facilitates something does not necessarily mean that you open the floodgates. So that's why educators and system providers and creators have to understand, especially within the educational realm, of how to limit the usage of technology. Use it, make use of it, no doubt about it, but Is it all the time? Because right now we find that, subhanAllah, when you see a 7-year-old, 5-year-old always on the phone, always on the iPad, and parents, they're kind of like, yeah, just let him, it's, I get some time off, you know what I mean? Because the parent just recently got off their computer working 7, 8 hours, online because again of the lockdown. No, this is not the correct way actually, and the studies are showing that, husband and wife, sitting next to each other, about to sleep, and everyone's on their phone. People sitting at the dinner table, about to eat, and again, everyone is on their phone, right? We're not talking to each other anymore. We're not, there's no proximity anymore, and that is hurting our children, is hurting our students. All right. So why am I saying this? Because counselors have to understand where some of these anxieties and depressions come within the students. You might think that, oh, but he's just a child. Come on, brothers and sisters. How many of your young nephews or brothers or sisters don't have access to an iPad or a phone or something like that? Most of them do. Some games, some video, and everything is fast, right? Like TikTok style, right? 10 seconds, tuck, swipe, 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 swipe. So the brain, what do you think happens to the brain? The brain is trying to gather as much information as possible. If you've studied the way the brain works, right? And when information is passed, then the neuronal connections are strengthened or weakened depending on what you're feeding in, right? So the brain is constantly, neuroplasticity, right? Constantly adjusting to the input and the amount of information that is receiving, and is trying to make sense of that, right? So the way, and it's education. This is exactly what education is. What do you think happens when someone picks a phone and they're watching a video or they're being educated? Information transfer. That's education. Information is being transferred inside. We are basically uploading, right? But if it's done in such a fast, I call it like a fast food information, fast food education, drive by or drive through education. If it's happening so fast, what do you think the effects will be on the development of that person, right? So we can reduce that. There's a study in University of Pennsylvania in 2018 showed that just a reduction, just 30-minute reduction in the usage of social media can have huge effects on a person's well-being. You know, it's 30 minutes. Imagine an hour. Imagine two. I always recommend to people to do what's called phone fasting. You know, I know most of us work on the phone. Trust me, my work is mostly on the phone. Subhanallah, So, but we should, and it should be part of our program. There should be screen-free time within our educational system, within our classrooms, within our houses, right? And you will see a huge change in the way students, children, adults, everyone behaves. Okay, we are suffering, brothers and sisters. Mental health issues are on the rise. Anxiety and depression are on the rise. 2020, it was huge. The amount of clients that I had in 2020, I couldn't handle it anymore. You know what I mean? And 2021 doesn't look better, right? Because it's still lockdown. People are there. They're forced to be together. It's not natural. It's not natural to stay in the house. I'm sure husband and wives are, sometimes, just had enough of each other, right? And even I talk to parents all the time. Some of the parents come and tell me, look, brother, like I love my kids, but I just can't take it anymore. They're, you know, I'm spending 24 hours with them. They're just, I need time. I need my own time. I need to feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to. I love my kids. I'm a parent, yes, but it's not natural like that. You know what I mean? So systems can be created. Okay, systems can be, yes, making space. Making space is one of the fundamentals of positive psychology. Okay, it's called making space. You need to basically pull back and just, you need some time. And when you don't have space, and not just physical space, I'm talking about intellectual, mental, spiritual space. If you don't, then you do. That's what is stress and anxiety in the end, other than the lack of fulfillment. There's a gap in within yourself. There's something that needs to be filled. You're not being yourself. And that is why it's like there's a shortcut in your system, in your internal system. Something is not working right. Your flow is blocked, and then you don't feel well. And that is, your body reacts through stress. increased heart rate, palpitations, and so on, lack of sleep, or some manifest through extra sleep, and so on, gain a weight gain, which in the end, so the mind, the body, the spirit, okay, the emotions are connected. And that is why, if we don't understand the totality of the human being, okay, that yes, we are spiritual, we are emotional, we are intellectual, and we are physical. If we don't understand that, if we don't understand that about the child, you don't understand about yourself, you cannot have a successful system, because you might be targeting just one. You might be targeting just one. So that's why the importance of psychology, ilmul nafs, or as we call it, right? It's critical. It's critical for every system, every government, every institution, even corporations. In the West, corporations have psychologists, have counselors within the workplace. You're an engineer, you're a doctor, whatever it is. Within that establishment, you have a counselor. If you feel down, you can talk to someone. Someone can help you. All right. And I end with this: the propaganda for it has to be huge. Why? Because again, going back to my point, most people don't want to come forward and admit they have a problem. Just like our countries were not doing that when it came to, for example, special needs and special education for the longest time, out of shame, right? Now, finally, things are changing, right? But imagine how many kids we could have helped if we would have just realized it a bit faster. But we need to push through propaganda. What is propaganda? Positive propaganda, where we push it out through advertisements. We make noise that we are here to help you. Okay, there's no judgment. This is a treatment place. This is not a condemnation. This is a place of support and comfort. Come forward. There's no issue. You can come forward, right? This is propaganda. You have to. Social media, advertisements, programs, the government on every level, the Ministry of Education, everyone is involved. That every parent, child, elder, everyone knows that there's a system in place and there is help and support. You feel down, these are the symptoms: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is how we solve it: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. KISS, keep it sweet and simple. Okay, don't complicate things, and people will come. If you build it, they will come. Okay, but they have to feel like they can connect to you. You have to make sense. You have to invite them, and they will come. This is pretty much what I have to say. Of course, there's so much more that we can get into details, into how and what and so on, but it's beyond the scope of this lecture. What I wanted to just do today is build the awareness. I'm sure that you're already aware anyway, okay? And just look at some of the problems and what are some of the solutions. Okay, I believe we have the resources. It's just a matter of, hey, let's do it. Let's just roll it out. And I'm sure, and I know that a lot of institutions are already have rolled the ball out, but I think we need to do it faster, because every day that passes by, especially now within this context and this problem of the COVID and the lockdown, there's such a huge need for reaching out a helping hand. Now, this is what I wanted to share with you. If there's any questions, inshallah, or any comments.
Thanks a lot, brother. And it was really amazing, and I must say it was unique. And also, we're not all psychology students, so it was definitely an awareness for others as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you guys have any questions, you can ask in the chat.
Any
And
teachers or educators from the Faculty of Education on the chat?
mm, I think we're mostly students, but we did
I
invite
mean,
our professors.
teachers as in the Faculty of Education. I mean, to be teachers who are studying at the Faculty of Education, because that is so
Ah,
much
okay.
relevant to them.
It is. It is. I do have a question.
Okay.
It is that how do we deal with child confidentiality? Like if a child comes to me as a school counselor, I'm not yet, but how do we let the parents know? Should we let the parents know? What if the child doesn't want the parents to know? Like, how do we deal with that, confidentiality issues?
Okay. So as a counselor, like, you have to first make sure that you establish a relationship with that child where they feel that you are going to respect their confidentiality, right? Because again, they might not open up, but at the same time you're in a very difficult position because you have to establish whether what the child is saying is correct or not, okay, or true. So just because a child says something does not always make it correct or true. That's another, it's quite a sensitive balance, and it comes with training and understanding. Okay, understanding to identify the signs, right? So sometimes it happened through my practice and through my experience where children would say something like my parent beat me or something like, and it didn't happen, but they just wanted to get, they watched a movie or something like that. They got an idea from an American movie or something like that where the child did something to the parents, and these things happen, right? So the counselor has to be very, very tuned in with what's happening, and to not jump to conclusions right away. So through establishing that relationship, you are protecting the child's confidentiality, and at the same time you're looking for the evidence and the proof of what the child is saying through questioning. The best technique at this level is questioning, okay? And if it leads to a point where the parents have to be called in, it could be indirectly, where you're not saying, hey, by the way, the counselor saw a problem with your child, please come in, right? This is going to cause a lot of problems with the parents. So there's a lot of hikmah, a lot of wisdom that has to be developed, again, through training, through offering different situations, different scenarios where the counsel is trained in. What if this happens? What if that happens, right? So then they develop a sense of sensitivity when it comes to that. So you call the parents and you say, look, we wanted to discuss something which is totally unrelated to what is happening to the child, okay? And the psychologist or the counselor now probes into the parents and tries to match the stories and understand whether there is something that is happening or not. If you see some huge marks on someone's face or anything like that, then obviously that is a different story, right? But definitely confidentiality is very important. The child has to feel like they can trust you. You have to understand, no, no, I don't mean anything by this, but there are a lot of problems in our societies. There are a lot of parents who do not know how to be parents, okay? And that's another thing that governments have to invest in parenting programs. And there's a lot of issues that are faced, and sometimes the children suffer. And remember the trauma, right? The trauma is what's going to get them. So yes, we are responsible. We are responsible to uphold the truth. We are responsible to uphold the amana, or the trust. That is something that comes to us in front of God, in front of, as our work, our professionalism. That is a responsibility. Okay, but at the same time, we have to be very wise in how we deal. There's no black and white here. Okay, the counselor, through consistent training, consistent scenarios, they develop the sensitivity of understanding how to go about understanding this, the problem or the situation.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
People are saying thank you. Yeah,
You're
this
welcome,
lecture was
everyone.
insightful.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless all of you. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Sister, if there's no more questions, inshallah.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot, everybody. And thanks a lot, Brother Gabriel.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay, inshallah, we
Yeah,
we end it. Okay,
yeah,
thank you
thank
so much.
you.
Thank you so much for having me. And inshallah, hopefully once this lockdown happens, maybe we will meet for a lecture in
Yeah,
person,
yeah,
inshallah,
for
or
sure,
for a training
inshallah.
session, inshallah,
Definitely,
in person.
definitely, inshallah. Okay.
All right,
Assalamu
inshallah.
alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.